this video, I'm going to be building the ultimate high airflow RTX 4090 gaming PC build. With a staggering 7 140mm fans, a 420mm all-in-one, and the world's most powerful consumer gaming graphics card, this is a build you don't want to miss. I'll be telling you guys why you should build a system like this, and also why you frankly shouldn't, and looking at performance later on to see how hot all of these new components, I'm looking at you, Ryzen 7000, really run with the right cooling solution. Let's do this. As with all of my builds, I'm going to start things off by giving you a quick rundown of everything that makes it possible. Why on earth I selected the parts I did, the rationale and thoughts behind each one. Stay tuned to see me actually build this PC in the video and test it out a little bit later. Let's start off by looking at the CPU and GPU combo. Now, of course, the NVIDIA RTX 4090 is the most powerful gaming GPU on the market. AMD's 7900 XTX is impressive, but frankly flounders by comparison, and this also sets itself well above NVIDIA's 16GB RTX 4080. The TUF card has got 3 large fans, making it about as good as you're going to get. No cooler really provides more airflow than this, they're all very similar in design, making it the perfect choice for a build like this one. For the CPU, I've picked up AMD's Ryzen 9 7950X. For now, I'll be swapping it out for the 3D, which is on the way. Unfortunately, AMD don't really ever send us their CPUs before launch, even like as a loan, so it's difficult for us to really evaluate them in time to get these videos out for you guys, but one's on the way, I've got no money left, but that's fine. I'll be installing this into the ROG Strix X670E gaming Wi-Fi, a board that I took a look at briefly during the Ryzen launch, but haven't seen much of since NVIDIA's dominance with 13th gen, and to be honest with you, a bit of a lack of Ryzen 7000 content here on the channel, but we are looking to change that and deliver you guys a little bit more balance in terms of our spread of AMD and Intel-based content. Looking around this motherboard, we've got the all-important AM5 socket, PCI Gen 5 for the M.2 and for the PCI slot. Of course, this is an X570 Extreme version, so has Gen 5 support. And if we take a look at the rear I.O. just here, Wi-Fi 6E, plenty of 10GB USB-A's and even a 20GB USB-C. It's a pretty solid, not the highest end X670 there is, but certainly not the cheapest. Latest pricing and availability though will be found as always in the description below. Something which also fits the criteria is this TUF RAM XG memory from Thermaltake. Did you know Thermaltake made RAM? I didn't either until just a few months ago. This kit though is very, very nice. Take a look at that. Really, really cool aesthetic, and with a speed of 6,000 mega transfers per second, it's not a bad memory kit either. Storage will be provided by a Samsung 980 Pro. It's available with or without a heatsink, depending on how exactly you want your build to look, and of course, if your motherboard has built-in heat spreaders. Ours does, meaning you don't have to go for this more pricey heatsink version if you want to save yourself a bit of cash. Looking at some of the other components then, Thermaltake Ceres 500 is the case I've picked. This might be one of the best airflow chassis on the market, not only because basically every single panel is perforated, but also because it comes as standard with, wait for it, not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 140mm fans out of the box. Now that's not to say we won't be turning this build up to 11 by adding in 3 packs of the Thermaltake Swafan EX14s. These we'll be looking at later, but they magnet together to reduce the horrible cable mess that you often have with fans. But this thing is going to fit the build perfectly for getting as much air through the system as possible. It also of course supports a 420mm all-in-one, which is where the Tough Liquid Ultra 420 comes in. And maybe we can use the integrated fans that we no longer need, which are still RGB by the way, in a couple of other areas. Maybe make the radiator push-pull without having to buy any extras, maybe add them into the top or the bottom or the rear. We're going to figure all of that out as we go. Power is also going to be provided by Thermaltake, the Tough Power GF3 1350. They also do an RGB 850 unit, which I accidentally had on the table before. Let's pretend that never happened. This is better for the 4090, 4080, 4070, 7900 XTX. The 850 will be fine. This is a bit overkill, but it's always better to have too much power than too little. Trust me, I learned that lesson the hard way when 3000 series dropped a few years ago. I booted the PC up and it crashed like every 5 minutes for an hour and I just couldn't figure out why. And it was because I was rocking 650 watt power supply. Anyway, I think it's time we actually get this build put together and start things off with the motherboard, CPU, RAM, and SSD, otherwise known as the motherboard assembly. I'm going to start things here by just installing our Ryzen processor. I've been getting a lot of stick recently for the number of Intel builds that we do, and in fact, I did a video where we recommended the best CPUs and GPUs you could buy this year for a build. We got a bit of stick due to the lack of AMD CPU recommendations. I just want to clarify, this is a great option, the 7950X and X3D, but the 13900K is also incredibly competitive, so compare the two and make your own informed decision. Memory or RAM is next. I think you guys building a system like this probably know how this goes. Slots 2, boom, slots 4, and we can control the RGB a bit later using Thermaltake's own proprietary software. I will also be doing some CPU cooler prep in a moment, but hold your horses, guys. We've got the SSD to finish off first, which is going to involve the addition of a small screwdriver like this one, referred to on the channel as a teeny tiny screwdriver. Of course, a standard Phillips head is going to be too big, so you want to make sure you go for a smaller one to avoid too much trouble. I will miss the integrated heatsink a little bit, but I think the 980 Pro is a really nice design heatsink, and it's good to show the SSD a bit of love every now and again. In terms of what cooler prep needs actually doing, it's just making the water block a bit easier to pop in later. Now, to do that, we need to actually unbox what is a brand new cooler. I've got to say, a 420mm cooler, always a lot bigger than you think it's going to be. You know what 3 140mm fans look like, but it is just an absolute monster. Look at the size of that. That is like sizably bigger than my quite objectively large head. Now, inside of the cooler box, you'll see a bag like this with 4 compression fitting thumb screws and some weird, like, brackets, these black brackets just here. Now, having a quick look at the cooler, and one advantage of the AMD lineup has just become pretty apparent. Installing CPU coolers is actually very easy. I need to simply finish the assembly here of the brackets and the screws. This is going to give us a little bit more space to actually tuck everything away before finally we pop the bracket itself onto the water block of the cooler. Now, believe it or not, as long as the motherboard assembly has these pre-installed black plastic brackets, which ours obviously does, you haven't got to do anything else. Don't have to take them off, you haven't got to put a back plate on, it's all kind of done for you. Nice and easy, and we like that system from AMD. It's good. It wins some thumbs up from us, which means all I need to do next is actually add the motherboard into place, and we can finish the cooler here on afterwards. I've also gone ahead and pulled out the back fan, as I say, I'll be popping in these new fancy Thermaltake fans, which means I also want to do the same to the front. I don't think I've ever taken the front off before. Oh, sick. That was nice and easy. And I can go ahead and actually remove all of these fans just here. So there's a little bit of a screwdriver fun to be had. There's 2 of them out. Do need to just get the bottom one out and demessify all of the cables as well in the process. A bit complicated, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Okay, so I have good news and I have bad news. The fans are out, but sadly, the push-pull well, I say the fans are out. There we go. So sorry, the push-pull config I was hoping for doesn't fit because of the way the power supply shield's integrated, which is, I suppose, kind of okay. I'm a bit disappointed, but I suppose you could do that at the top if you were really intent on that being the way. Either way, I'm still glad I took these out, as I want to have a look at Thermaltake's slightly upgraded fans, the Swafan EX RGB. Now, I'm told they magnet together. That's what Thermaltake tell me anyway. So let's have a look how that works in practice. Oh, wow, look at this. Whoa! Oh, that's cool. Aha, that's 2. And then also a third one. Look at that. Isn't that awesome? And then for cable management, we have... Oh, sick! Even this cable management's back. Watch this. You ready? Here we go. Right, so they go on. Wait for it. Nope. Nearly. Nope. Nope. Maybe it goes on the bottom. Hang on. Let's try that again, shall we? 3, 2, 1. No? What? Should have read the instructions, but I don't do that, so... Oh, there we go. Wait, action replay. How cool is that? So one cable is going to do the RGB and the power, so the speed and the lighting, for the whole freaking radiator. That is awesome. That is really, really cool. And the magnets are very strong. You can see I'm holding all 3 together. There we are. That's going to make it really, really structurally sound in the case. And also means I can be extra lazy when it comes to installing... Not that lazy. No. Oh, no. I can be extra lazy when it comes to installing the radiator screws, because although I do need to put plenty in, you don't necessarily need all 12 for the thing to actually be stable. But a couple on each fan at a minimum is what I'd recommend. Boom. We're making some solid progress. Let me clean off the desk a little bit before actually going ahead and adding in the water block onto the CPU here, and then our final 3 Thermaltake SWA fans at the top and at the rear of the case. I'll obviously worry about connecting them up to the hub a bit later, but for now, this thing's starting to come together. So then, some progress has been made, and we've also hit 1 or 2 problems. Now, I don't think we're going to be able to fit a third 140 in the top with the radiator like this. However, if we spin the radiator around or put the radiator at the top, we might do. I'm going to leave it like this for now, install the rest of the components, and see what extra room we have to play with at the end. I think I'm going to pop the power supply in next. It's not quite as exciting as the graphics card, but it's out the way. This is Thermaltake's, as I say, they're 1350. I've also picked up easy DIY fab cables. Now, I've created a list on my Amazon storefront in the US and the UK. I'll leave global links below though to my favorite PSU cable extensions you can buy. And let me tell you, these ones are incredibly cheap for what you get. You get motherboard, GPU, CPU. It's just great, really. So I'm gonna pop these in first. We've got one for the motherboard. Nicely does it. And then a couple for the CPU, of course. Ryzen 7000, pretty power hungry. So in this case, a pair of connections is gonna do us well before adding the PSU into the rear. Now, graphics card installation time. This is actually gonna install pretty easy, really, into the PC. It's just gonna pop in over here. Now, I say pretty easily, I think we're gonna have to lift these tubes up from the AIO cooler to get it in, and it looks like, let me take the mount out for now. Let's remove this. And then I'm gonna remove the right PCIe lanes. So this one just here, and of course, yeah, the one behind, which I can rather conveniently use to actually cover up the PCIe slots that were empty beforehand, before slotting the GPU itself into place and screwing it down for good measure. And then I think we're pretty much ready to boot this thing up and see just how good it looks when it's all powered up, and take a look, of course, at performance. Nice! Now that the build's been put together, it's time to take a look at performance, looking at frame rates in the latest titles, and also temperatures. So let's start off with temperatures, shall we? In the CPU temperature department, I was glad to report an average of 65 degrees Celsius, pretty chilly for our Ryzen processor, and that's a testament, of course, to the huge 420mm cooler. In terms of GPU temps, they were also pretty strong too, 49 degrees Celsius on the graphics card here, as an average with a max of 56 degrees C. In games, frame rate stacked up pretty well, as you'd expect from a 4090. Warzone 2 at 4K high with DLSS set to performance mode, for example, yielded just shy of 150 frames a second. The good results carried on rolling through into the COD Modern Warfare 2 title, very similar to Warzone 2 in its mechanic, but of course a different game, this time given 181 frames per second. Around 20 frames per second more on average at identical settings. Fortnite is next, and it's the only game today I tested at 1080p competitive settings to be precise, and the machine delivered 345 FPS. Of course, here you will hit a CPU bottleneck when gaming at 1080p with any 4090 tier graphics card, but it's good to see that that bottleneck was very minimal in this case. Apex Legends was next at 4K high settings. Here the build achieved another strong frame rate of 176 FPS on average, more than enough to satisfy even the most competitive high-end 4K gaming monitors. It goes without saying that other titles like Overwatch 2 obviously performed well as well. 4K Ultra delivered over 250 FPS in this title, while Battlefield 2042 also gave us strong results, 149 FPS on average at 4K high with DLSS set to performance mode. This is a build that really puts temperatures and airflow at the forefront of everything it's about, and I think it looks really, really good too. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like rating. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.